So let's start getting the spine twisting. And then turning and punching towards the side. Try and look right behind you. And then reaching up, one hand at a time. Good. And now, just a minute with the arms behind. Feel that point that the arms are pressuring on the spine. It's there or above the point that needs work. It's often opposite the solar plexus. So what's above this point tends to collapse downwards. And the struggle is to get it to lift. Can't use force. It's not a matter of physically thrusting upwards. Your spirits have to lighten to get this area to release. Remember the Teletubbies? Remember the sun, the image of the sun above them had a smiling, chuckling baby's face in it. That's the image that always comes to my mind. Sunny and cheerful and childlike. Sunny disposition. What a nice idea, isn't it? Teletubby. It's like the belly full of the imagination. Okay, now bring the hands out into prayer. Now we're just going to send the hands up, and as you do so, really pull the head back. Just be careful, but just feel like you're trying to sort of click the vertebra of the upper back. And then down. And keep going down until you're pulling the chin into the chest to look down on top of the fingers. And then repeat. But the enemy, especially nowadays, is depression. You really feel here that something in you is escaping. You're free, free of your depression. One more. And then just send the hands out to the side as to come back. And let's just start by just turning the head. You know, all the time we're working, we're trying to just watch it and listen, become aware. You know, does it feel different when I turn my head to the left to when I turn it to the right, and why? And then turning the hands over to face down and pointing the fingers. And now just one at a time. And again, feel as though it's difficult. So you're having to work quite hard to pull the hand in and then push the other one out. We get things wrong, not because they're too difficult, but because they're too easy. And so we tend to be careless and distracted. So when it's difficult, you have to apply your whole attention. And then the hands up and down. And there's the hands behind again. And now rolling the head. And again, just thinking of getting into the upper back. So trying to make this circle as big as possible, so stretching it beyond what you're used to. And then the other way. One more. Good. Okay, let's rub the hands and just do the knees. And remember, when we rub the knees, we're doing the knees a favor, but really we're getting into the belly and the lower back. And the hands to feel warm, difficult in this season. So you just have to rub them longer. And rubbing the knees. Applying pressure. leaning forwards to push forwards, pulling back. That's it, that's it. So getting this heaving action into the spine. John used to call it vomiting. So it's like you're puking up as you heave forwards. To come forwards, I'm pulling in my belly. Good. And now just a little for the legs. So just stretch out one of your legs. Yeah, it's easier if you're on a chair. So one leg is straight in front of you. And just push on the knee. So you're trying to straighten it. It feels like you're trying to bend it backwards. So pull the toes in towards you to get a stretch on the calf muscle. And you can just slowly extend the hand down towards the foot. It's the whole back of the leg we're trying to stretch. And then just swap round. So bend that leg and straighten the other one. This is especially important as we get older, because what all of my old people have in common is that they can't straighten their knees anymore. So their legs are permanently bent at the knee. And now swap over again, so the other leg. And now the same thing, but point the toes forwards. So it's a slightly different stretch because it gets more the front of the shin or the outside of the shin. Good. And then the other one finally. Pointing the toes as much as you can. You're trying to pull the toes under. But we don't all have that sort of flexibility in the foot. But if you can get it, it really changes everything. Our feet are quite coarse, largely from having worn shoes. One of the struggles is to wake them up. Okay, and then back. Now just another minute with the arms behind. Feel the thymus licking upwards like a candle flame. Yeah, so the heart is thrust upwards, but imagine Kirk Douglas, the dimple he had on his chin. So just imagine that someone's got their finger there and just very gently just pushing it in and down a little bit so that your neck is extended. The head is difficult. The head always wants to crane forwards. It just shows that the mind is getting involved in the wrong sort of way. The mind should be trying to get out of the situation rather than into it. So the head is drawing back. You see someone sitting in Zazen well, and it just looks amazing because they've really dealt with the head. When your chin is pulled in and back, then the mind just empties naturally, and we hate it because our whole existence is based upon our noisy head and our noisy mind. The fact that we're talking to ourselves all the time. And when that stops, we feel as though we've ceased to exist. When we meditate on Saturday, we do 40 minutes. It's lovely because they all struggle to get there on time because they know it's important. And Dave always starts off like this. He's always sitting a good 10 minutes like this. See, with Dave, it's like his whole being is based around his sort of Yorkshire uprightness. Yeah. That sort of good, noble character that's selfless. Yeah. A minute in prayer and feel the flame of the thymus and the middle fingers aligning with that. So it's like your chin has to be pulled in, otherwise it's going to get burned. When I first came to Israel and the way that I was working changed dramatically from when I was with John, partly because of beginning to work with Nitsan, but also just because it was becoming more me, I guess. I was trying to think of a term to describe what I was trying to teach. And the best I came up with was spinal hygiene. So just trying to get everyone's spine fluid and able to transmit energy up and down. If you've got a good spine, then you're healthy. Okay, so just look at yourself. What you need is allow the knees to go out. You don't have to push them. I mean, ideally, we would like to get into the right position through relaxation. So what it is, it's just a softening around the sacrum and either side of the sacrum, and just bending the legs a little bit so that there's a bit of space between the knees. There's nothing worse than doing this. It's not just bad for your posture, it's bad for your spirit. So you want to feel the legs like delicate springs. So if anyone was to press down on me, it would send me into my legs. And then if they release, my legs would just naturally spring up. Okay, now we're just going to bring the arms up to the side like we did last time, but feel the body getting heavier. So as I bring my hands up, effectively, I'm beginning to get heavier, and that is driving me down into my legs. And then as I bring the hands down, I'm getting lighter. So I'll come up slightly, maybe only a centimeter, but it's more the feeling. The hands are rising, but I've got this feeling of a stronger flow down through me, because it's not just gravity now, it's my own energy that's flowing down. And then as the hands come down, it just releases that and I can pop back up again. I want to be aware of it. If you were in water in the pool and you were doing this, then it would have this effect. As you brought your arms up, it would push your body down. So I'm being driven down into my legs. And here I'm just springing up, popping up like a bit of relief. And now the heart qigong, very similar. Again, it's pushing me down into my legs. And then as I bring my hands in, there's a sense of relief. The legs can rise up. And now here, I have to make sure here that I bend the legs. So the up of my hands is balanced by the down of my spine into my sacrum and tail. And then here I can allow myself to come up out of the legs. Feel the tail extending right down between your feet. And then the body rising. Remember, this is for the heart, this Qigong. So I'm bringing things into my heart. And then here, really lifting, got that point where the heart is almost lifting right upwards, looking upwards. Imagination. You have to feel it. A bit like an actor in character. You know, everything that they do when they're in character is of that character. They're not just pretending anymore. They actually become the character. So same here, I become this creature, like an octopus that's got these flowing tentacles wriggling away. So when I'm doing the exercise, I'm not just repeating something for the sake of passing time or getting more healthy or more fit. I'm releasing something and just seeing where it's going to take me. Good. And now just extend the feet and riding horse. Gravity. Imagine the rain, these little droplets of rain falling down. There's no wind, so they're falling directly down. And it's all your spine wants to do is align with that. And then just feel the other direction, basically. So you can think of it as like little arrows pointing out of the ground, or you can just think of it as the, the vacuum of space that surrounds the earth, just pulling gently. And that's lifting, something is trying to be drawn out of you and up. So you're not just the body. You have this spirited and spiritual aspect, which is quite separate. We want to separate them, make a clean separation, and then they can both function together well. If they're clinging too much to each other, then the whole situation is just dirty, it's muddy, clouded, grey. And now let's introduce the centrifugal and the centripetal. So turning. As I turn, something is thrown outwards, and that becomes lighter, and something is drawn inwards, and that gets heavier. Think of a top, the spinning top of the child. When it's still, it rests on its side, but when you spin it, its sides come up, and it spins about its pivot. And that's because the rim effectively gets lighter as it spins, and so lifts off the ground and stays upright. This is the feeling here. The bit in the middle, my spine, my quiet mind, my concentrated spirit, is all gathering into that heavy center. And my energy, my body, my flamboyance is being thrown outwards and is lifting. And just want to enjoy it. It's like Thich Nhat Hanh, saying, when you really get into breathing and quieten the mind sufficiently that you can really pay attention to the breathing, then he said, then you realize there's nothing more enjoyable than just taking that in-breath and then letting go into the out-breath. Nothing more enjoyable than just taking a simple breath. And it's a bit like that here. It's just so pleasant. It's like being on a swing. Remember? Someone's pushing you and the whole world is moving all around you. And you're weightless. There's that point as you reach the apex of the swing, you're effectively weightless. It's the feeling here. If I can really get into the turning, there's a sense of weightlessness. Slip into the second one. So now I really have to imagine these swirls wrapping me up. I'm being swaddled in this turning. And that enables me to move the body quite cleanly from heel to heel. You know, when you get a spinning top and you spin it, and then it sort of moves, sort of wanders around, and just the quality of that movement is just so different from anything else. It's almost like it's exploring as it moves. It's the sense with our movement in Tai Chi, we want it to be quite other than any other movement that we do. Good. Riding horse again. Make sure that the little big toes are coming in just a little bit. Big toes in, little toes trying to venture out. Knees trying to separate. This is what's difficult. My knees are trying to go out, but my feet are trying to come in. Aligning with gravity, which means my sacrum has to be slightly forwards or drifting forwards. Simply because my thighs are actually angling forwards. That's why the sacrum feels as though it's drifting forwards. Feel the levity operating upon the heart, the top of the head, and the occiput, where the spine comes into the skull. All of those points are being pulled upwards. And again, I don't want to use force. I don't want to use force from my legs to actually thrust up. I want to feel the pull up. You're dripping wet and you're steaming. Fire and water. Now let's try just a bit against the wall. Get yourself so you're sort of arm's length from the wall. And then just lean. So you're not putting very much weight forwards, you're just leaning a little bit. And then just start pacing. We're just trying to bring some pressure, get some forces operating. So my feet are trying to push the ground backwards, and my hands are consequently pushing into the wall. But I'm not trying to push the wall over or push the ground backwards, and it's obvious they're not going to move. So what happens is these forces come into your body, into your core, gather around the spine. Trying to keep the shoulders relaxed. Trying to get as much action as possible around the sacrum, so sort of wiggling your bum a bit like we do when we're pumping the feet on the ground. So it's basically that exercise really, but with leaning into the wall. So now I'm flicking my hip out here, and now I'm flicking my hip out here. If anything, this makes it easier because the forces in your body are supporting the lower back. And then just back into riding horse. And now let's just figure of eight. You know, like waving hands in the clouds, but big. So one hand drops down. As I'm coming in this direction, bringing my weight into this leg, I'm allowing this dropping hand to push my knee out here and help release the energy from the back of the hips. So just trying to make the movement of the arms big in order to encourage this to sort of swell open with the relaxation and with the gravity, the pressure of gravity. Love that image of the mansion we're like a mansion full of rooms, a house full of rooms, but we only really inhabit 2 or 3 of the rooms. So what we're trying to do in internal work is gain access to the rooms that aren't normally occupied. And it's difficult because they're all a little bit forbidding. You remember the front room of my grandmother's houses was always kept for, when guests came round. So most of the week it was closed and we weren't allowed in it. And if ever we did go in it, it was just really gloomy and cold because it was never heated. You'd only light the fire on the day that the guests were coming. It's a bit like that. We've got all these rooms inside us that are never heated, never occupied. And I'm just trying to find the keys and then just pluck up the courage to go in and turn on the heat. One of my favorite quotations is from Edward Dahlberg, who was an American writer from the sort of 40s and 50s. He's worth reading because his vocabulary is just enormous. So you guarantee, just read a paragraph, you're going to learn at least 2 or 3 new words. What he said was, a man does not change. He just stands more revealed. And that's the sense. We're just trying to become complete, trying to reveal those parts of ourselves that are just hidden. Partly because of trauma, partly just because of lack of courage. And also because we don't really need them. We can function reasonably well. But you always have this feeling that that there's things inside you that want to come out, but are just not allowed to. You've sort of fallen asleep. Always think of, in Lord of the Rings, the king of the horsemen, the Rohanim. When we first encounter him, he's under that spell. Saruman has him under a spell, and he's sitting there on his throne, completely depressed, and he looks so grey and old. You can almost see cobwebs on his face. And then when Gandalf comes in and dispels the spell, suddenly you see the colour and the vigour coming back into him. We're like a wraith, a spectre of what we could be. Bring it back. With this flow down, but it's so gentle. Just imagine that the image of rain, but it's like it's in slow motion. So these droplets, like snow, the snowflake falls slowly because it's got such a large surface area compared to its volume. So there's that drag of the air. It's like that here. So it's like any wind and it'll blow the snowflakes around. So we want this quiet mind to produce this pure down, allow gravity to simply drop. Feel the toes, push the big toes down. Again, like in Lord of the Rings, you know, the creatures that have the real resilience are the hobbits, and they're the only creatures in the Fellowship with bare feet, and not just bare feet, but big, hairy feet. So, you know, like they're sort of very much foot, they're very much on the ground, in the ground. And then just bringing it up. And just make sure there's the knees are sort of trying to drift apart. So the heart lifts up naturally, and the knees lift up naturally. We're always wanting to sing and dance. So the heart is trying to sing, and the knees are trying to dance upwards. And they always say, if you want to cheer up, just sing. Remember the famous five? Enid Blyton. So it's like your five toes are like the famous five, yeah. So the big toe is Julian, who's always being sensible and trying to reel in the naughty youngsters. Your little toe is like Timmy the dog. It's wanting to scamper off all the time and chase rabbits.